challenge is Q4 is stacked with these, excessive holidays that take up a significant amount of Q4. Once you start a maintenance item, that inspection facility has basically control over your aircraft.
Yep.
An owner thinks that they're smart enough to sell it. Well, they're smart enough to get somebody to make an offer, but that's just the starting point of a transaction.
Yep.
As I tell you guys all the time, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Airplane IQ podcast, where we help buyers and sellers make smarter aviation decisions based on reliable data and real-world aviation experience. I'm Tom Lelio, joined here by our fearless leader, Steve King, as well as Munya, our resident AMP and PA46 specialist, and Tyler, our intern. So this is the team here at Airplane IQ, and we're really excited. Part of the team, yes, part of the team to bring you this podcast, which is going to be helping you buy and sell without wasting time, losing money. And so every time we'll have an evergreen topic. Today we're going to be talking about the calendar, and if you're a buyer or a seller, that where we're at in the calendar makes a difference. If we're in January versus if we're in August. So this is going to be important information.
Very important.
And we're also going to be pulling back the curtain on some of our past deals. One deal in particular that I had where the FAA ended up calling me in the middle of a deal. So that's always interesting, and how to navigate that. And then final thoughts. But Steve, thank you so much for being here. And tell us a little about Airplane IQ, kind of with the genesis of it, and we'll get this started.
Airplane IQ exists because of my experience as an aircraft owner and as a pilot for so many years. I've owned 12, 15 aircraft personally. Everything from single engine piston to jets. I fly and own a Citation 5 that I fly myself now, and so I've been all across that, from type rated Mustangs to 500s to Eclipse jets. Eclipse jet was my first airplane, so that was kind of an interesting ownership experience. But as you mentioned, people are starting to rely on ChatGPT and AI for information and data on how to make a decision, and the problem is it's I kind of liken it to garbage in, garbage out, right? So topically the data can be valuable and important, but it really has to be tied together with somebody who has experience and a team that has the capability to convert raw data into something that's meaningful for a customer, actionable for a customer, and I think that AI can complement what we do with those large data sets. But really, at the end of the day, buying an airplane is still very much a personal experience.
I think it's the difference between the information that AI gets and people can grab from the internet, and the intelligence as an emotional intelligence, a personal intelligence, an experience, right? That can't be traded out. So, all right, let's get into our topic for today.
Let's go.
So, talking about the calendar, right? Let's talk about, what do buyers and sellers need to know given whatever calendar season that they're in. So let's maybe start with Q4, since that's the most known.
Yeah, I think it's I've contemplated for several years sending out to our clients a T-shirt that says "Procrastinators Unite" and turn it around and says "Tomorrow." I think that the challenge is that we typically don't get proactive about making year-end planning decisions, and Q4 has always historically been the busiest time of the year for us, especially for our U.S. buyers. A lot of times what will happen is people will wait until after the holidays, after the summer, when their kids are going back to school, when their grandkids are gone, those kinds of things, and then they go, okay, well, now we've got to focus on something. And the challenge is Q4 is stacked with these, excessive holidays that take up a significant amount of Q4. And so you look at, pretty much from my experiences is that from Thanksgiving through the end of the year is skeleton crews. It's very difficult to get things done, and that really disadvantages a buyer. It's certainly an advantage to a seller because, a buyer can't do the level of due diligence and investigation on an airplane that they normally would like to. So, we get really proactive July, August about our messaging and on our outreaches, and I'm sure that people watch this that are aircraft owners or thinking about buying or selling, that that are in our databases are getting phone calls from all of us saying, "Hey, we're here," and we probably need to start talking about year-end planning because once you start tripping those calendar times, it becomes very difficult to get in front of it.
Yeah, it's not just you come in, pre-buy is going to take 2-3 days, 2-3 weeks, whatever. Once they find something, you could be in trouble.
Well, that's right, and certain aircraft types are more prone to certain supply chain shortages, certain maintenance issues, service bulletins, or bigger maintenance events that are coming up. That again, all of our contracts and there's some limitations on the requirement for something to meet the put in service date in a calendar year for the tax benefits. And that becomes a real driver because you have to do a in-service flight for a business purpose within the calendar year to be able to take advantage of those. And if you don't, because the airplane's still not airworthy or returned to service, tax benefits go out the window.
That's just it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that's Q4. What's the playbook then? If I know Q4 is going to be busy and I need to have something under basically you're saying you have to have something under contract by beginning of Q4.
Two aspects, Tom. First off, if you're a seller, you need to have your airplane being ready now. We need to start getting photographs done. We need to start making sure that maintenance pedigrees are done because the last thing that we want to do is be able to put an airplane in for maintenance and Q4 versus evaluation in Q4.
So you're saying Q3, roughly 6 months, is kind of a good.
I think 4 to 6 months is a good spectrum. Obviously, you don't want to be out there in April, May when you're trying to do a year-end deal. But right now is the time where sellers need to be seriously asking themselves the question: if they're going to sell the airplane this year, we need to start talking about it right now.
Yeah.
And if you're looking to buy something this year, we need to start talking about it in the next 30 days and start zeroing in on the aircraft that's going to meet your mission and where we're going to go with it.
And I'm going to have these guys ask you a couple questions that they're writing down in just a moment. But we've got Q3, start getting ready to sell, to buy, Q4, time to buy. So what does Q1 look like? I mean, is that maybe a good time for people to buy because everything's been picked over and maybe sellers are more desperate or they don't care now because they missed the depreciation? Like, what about Q1?
There's kind of two pools of buyers that we've experienced over that last period of time where you've got the U.S. or the domestic buyer who wasn't concerned with the tax benefit, wants to try to get a deal on an airplane, and then you have the foreign buyers who were looking at airplanes that didn't sell in that fiscal year that aren't affected by the tax benefits or implications, and so we see the market shift to this pod, this pod, this pod, this pod. And ultimately, that's what creates that balance, everything except for August.
Right. And I think one of the most important things is understanding that if from a seller's perspective, if you're trying to sell your aircraft, sure, Q4 might be the busiest time of year, but if you need to sell before that or outside of that, that's where the value of an experienced broker comes in.
Absolutely.
Because if you're just throwing it on controller and you're dealing with all these tire kickers, like that's not going to be helpful. But an experienced broker brings their book of business.
That's working hard versus working smart.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's an important part, of the equation is a good broker has the ability to utilize all these different data points by understanding where the market shift comes in, where the buyer pools comes in, and where you're at in the calendar. And there's certain times where someone may have a large inspection on a CJ, for example, a Doc 10 inspection that's a 3-year inspection, a Phase 5 on a legacy citation, 144 month on a Gulfstream. Those kinds of inspections that will take significant amounts of downtime, where that airplane may be down for 3 months, 4 months. You've got a 5,000 cycle gear inspection on a Gulfstream. That airplane could be down for 6 months. If you need engines on a Mustang and you're not on a program, you could find that you can't get engines for 6 to 9 months. If you need windshields on an XLS or an XLS Plus, you might not be able to get a windshield for 3 months, 4 months. If you look at some of these lead times, those can come into play as well that will drive why you can list at a certain time and why you can't.
Right. And as brokers, we're dealing with the buyers on a regular basis.
Sure.
So it's not just the one flash in a pan. We've been talking with some of these buyers for years, waiting for that right plane. And if you're the seller and you're the right plane, well, we can make that happen, And so I just think that's sometimes sellers, at least I've been hearing on the phones lately, oh, I'll just put it on the controller myself, and they think that will kind of solve it. And I think it's a little short-sighted.
It's very short-sighted because, when you're trying to sell your own aircraft, it's a lot of people do it, and a lot of people do it successfully. But I would argue that a lot of people don't have the experience of being able to oversee a maintenance event or an inspection and having their airplane go into a facility that, for example, I may not ever send an airplane into because the airplane may never come back out.
Yes, so many of those.
And so, an owner thinks that they're smart enough to sell it. Well, they're smart enough to get somebody to make an offer, but that's just the starting point of a transaction. Yep. The hardest part of that transaction is deciding on what the terms of the pre-buy evaluation are going to be, who's going to do the pre-buy evaluation, what the caps on that could be, and not having the experience to be able to carve those into the documents and as part and parcel of the transaction. Those are the gotchas that all of a sudden that guy who says, I can sell my airplane by myself, realizes that he just lost $75,000 in squawks that somebody nitpicked him on and weren't really legitimate, and the buyer ultimately is never going to do them, but he's going to take that credit off the purchase price. So you tell me, who comes out the better end?
And the thing is, we live and breathe this stuff all the time. We're not lawyers, we're not mechanics, but we see the bigger picture to fight for our clients. And so many times when people try to do it on their own, they're like, yeah, I got a lawyer. And then the lawyer sends you the ChatGPT APA or the template that's been floating around Google forever. And you're like, okay, just so you know, if you sign this, this is a problem. Let's pull back the curtain a little bit on maybe a story. I'd like to share a story and kind of get your take on it. We talked a little bit about the difference between an inspection and an evaluation or survey, whatever it might be. So I have a little bit of a story about that, and then you can kind of explain to us the difference between.
Sure.
So I had a plane under pre-buy. It was out in California, and it was down for maintenance, doing the pre-buy, doing the survey, and all of a sudden, 6 o'clock at night over here, I get a phone call, and they say, "This is the FAA. Is this Mr. Lelio?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh! Like, what's
maybe,
yeah, for sure." And come to find out, they're asking me, "Hey, we have Mr. So and So here in our custody. He was caught hopping the fence onto the FBO to take a look at the aircraft because he says it's his."
Meanwhile, I think I'd be more concerned with the Department of Homeland Security than I would the FAA on that.
Which I had to explain. I had to explain to the FAA. Well, he is representing the buyer that's in the transaction, and then I had to explain to this guy, you don't own the plane. This is not your airplane. You can't start like taking it apart, because they were getting it ready to take to outside of the United States, we'll just say, and they were preparing the plane for the flight, but it hadn't closed or anything like that. So kind of a joking way to introduce the topic of a pre-purchase evaluation is what they were doing. But maybe tell us a little about that, the difference from a seller and a buyer's perspective of an evaluation or an inspection.
Well, as I said, there's kind of two pathways to determine the quality of an aircraft, and one of them is what we call a pre-purchase inspection.
Sure.
And in a pre-purchase inspection, we're doing just that. We're doing inspection work, and inspection work typically falls under whether it's whatever type of aircraft it is. It could be a dock inspection or a phase inspection.
It's by the maintenance manual. This is how you do an inspection.
Correct. And so there are different inspections that may be due, or that someone wants to do early as their inspection process. So, as I indicated before, if you take the CE 525 line, whether it's straight CJ, CJ1, CJ2, they vary a little bit, but each one of them will have typically a 36-month type inspection. And that 36-month type inspection is a very invasive inspection.
Yeah,
you're looking, you're taking panels apart, you're taking interiors out, you're taking, you're looking in the gear wells, you're looking in the trunnions and the pins, you're looking at flaps, ailerons, all of these different systems within the aircraft. And so, one of the challenges is once you start a maintenance item, such as a dock or a phase inspection, once you start that inspection facility has basically control over your aircraft.
Yep.
And that can be a real slippery slope.
Sure.
Because, a lot of inspections will snag certain things. Textron I love Textron, but they are notorious in the service centers for flagging placards and flagging corrosion. Well, I've seen them before where it says, screw head appears to have corrosion, 1.2 hours. Okay, well, 1.2 hours, that's $250. And by the time you look at it, they scratch it off and they go, well, it wasn't corrosion, but now we have to repaint it. So,
the wing.
I've had that happen. The bigger problem with that is and this is kind of a real world experience. A couple of times this has happened where we've had an aircraft in at a major brand facility service center, and they found surface corrosion.
Okay.
In two different examples. One was on a wing.
Okay.
It was by the wing root, not a structural or a moving structure, but there was some small right on the seam, some small what appeared to be blistering of the paint. Textron's the facility's immediate response was it's corrosion. We have to investigate.
Okay.
So
which is okay.
And the owner's like, okay, well, I'm fine with that. You can
inspect.
Now, here's where an inexperienced owner comes in and says,
Right.
yeah, no problem, you're authorized to repair that. Well, here's what happens. They get some young intern, or young newbie that's working on the floor, who comes in with his sandpaper and his grinding machine, and all of a sudden he grinds all of that off, and sure, he makes it all look nice and pretty with bare metal, but what he's done is he has degraded the thickness to where they actually will graph this out, and you'll see about 100 different measurements in every square centimeter, and they end up grinding too much material off. And so now we go from a spot of surface corrosion that if it had just been a little Scotch-Brite or a little bit of 1200 grit sandpaper and just gently massaged it off, it would have been done and repaired.
Service, yeah.
But now we've got a $90,000 repair.
Oh no!
I've had another situation on a little Mustang that we had represented a client on, and they found a little spot of surface corrosion on the corner of the emergency door hatch. Same example. Facility comes in, gets heavy-handed on this, heavy sandpaper, heavy grinding, over grinds the limits on that flange to below minimums. Well, now all of a sudden the aircraft is unairworthy. There's no replacement part available. I'll tell you another funny story about how we rescued the deal. But and the lead time was 274 days from the manufacturer for a new skin. So these are the types of things that if you don't have the right experience helping oversee that, because once it's in the facility and the facility says it's unairworthy, you have two choices. One, allow them to repair it, or two, say no, which they won't sign off the inspection, and then you have to go and get a ferry permit to move a ferry flight to move it to another place to have it done. So, but going back to the Mustang example, we were able to, again, because of our experience and because of our connections, I had an airplane that was down for engine overhauls, and I actually took his old door hatch, put it into mine because the airplane wasn't flying, took my door hatch, sent it to his airplane, put it onto his airplane.
Now it's good.
Substituted the part, and then when we got the new skin back, we were able to reverse everything, but it put the airplane back to airworthy status, and we were able to get the transaction closed.
Yeah. No, that's and that's again the creativity, the intelligence that comes working with this program.
Sometimes aviation is about thinking outside of the box. It's not it's not just the status quo, and when a maintenance facility says this is what it is, I challenge every maintenance facility. They love me and they hate me. They love me because I send pizzas there every Friday. They hate me because I make them demonstrate to me that something is in fact not airworthy or a part is not operational within the manufacturer's tolerances or limits, or it's exceeded its life. And so they know that we're very tough We're fair, but we're very tough, and we demand justification, not just, you got a $300,000 bill, and the seller or the buyer has to either eat or credit one side or the other.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Q4 is also one where it makes it a lot harder to
Do that
work
stuff.
those issues out, and it really puts us at a bit of a handicap and really disadvantages the clients in the transaction.
Yeah. Did you have a question, Tyler?
Yeah, actually, you let me read my question, and going into Q4 and looking at sellers and stuff, and I'm sure we have a lot of sellers watching right now, thinking about, I might want to get rid of my plane in Q4. How can a seller and us as brokers work with sellers in quarter 3, in quarter 2, to say, hey, let's go get this inspection done now. Let's go look at this maintenance. Let's go prepare this plane so when we get to quarter 4 and we have buyers who we might try to get those buyers engaged in quarter 3, but a lot of these buyers are going to procrastinate to quarter 4. And these buyers are trying to get these planes, and they need to be airworthy by the time tax season is due. How do we prepare these sellers so they don't have a deal come through and then they can't get airworthy and then falls through?
And if I could just dovetail on that as well, like that question. The question we get a lot from sellers is, I have an annual due, I have an inspection due. Should I just do it? Should I let that be the pre-buy? Curious from an owner's perspective.
My recommendation is whenever you can control the narrative on maintenance, control the narrative on maintenance. If you have something that's coming up to be due, get it, do it. We have a little Mustang right now, 51067, serial number 67. The owner asked me, he says, listen, we've got some items that are coming due. Should we wait and let a buyer do them, or should we do them now? And before he even stopped talking, I said, let's send the airplane to maintenance right now. Let's get those items cleared so that we don't have anything due through the end of the year.
Right.
That way, we're not dependent on maintenance being done in Q4. We're only dependent on evaluation being done.
Yep.
So that can help, again, control the narrative of timing and helping to make sure that our client is best positioned to be able to get a deal done.
Yeah,
As soon as possible.
and as brokers, when you're specializing in that market, you know what evaluations they're going to be looking at. So I think to Tyler's question of educating sellers, like, hey, listen, they're going to be asking these questions about the dock inspections, about the landing gear overhauls, about this AD, this SB, whatever you as a broker know. And so having that conversation with the owners to say, how are we going to tackle this?
Look, it's all about it's a playbook, right? It's about pre-positioning, and as I tell you guys all the time, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So the goal is we have to identify where we want to be, and then we reverse engineer backward,
Right.
So that we can get there. And that's no different in the management of buying or selling an airplane. We recognize where we want to be, and we reverse engineer it together.
100%. Well, you got anything for final questions?
We're getting into Q4 now. What are we telling the buyers?
I think it's a discussion right now on kind of better understanding who our client is and what our client's needs are, because it's this is the opportunity during this slower period to start to look back on what's a client's use profile going to be. Are they going to be an owner-flown aircraft? Are they going to be an owner sitting in the back having a glass of wine customer? There are different buckets that the buyer pool will fit into, and those data points coupled with how many people are going to be on their average trip, what are they typically carrying, how far are they going, are they operating in high elevation climates, are they operating in in this area, that area, whatever the case may be. And so understanding our clients' needs helps us to craft and identify a plan that says, okay, this airplane and this airplane are the two that we need to zero in on. And ultimately, we weed it down to what the best aircraft is that represents the best value for our customer and accomplishes 97% of their mission needs. You're never going to find the perfect airplane for everything, but you're going to find one that does a really darn good job at the majority of everything. And then we can help supplement, with charter on those that don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I think from there you definitely get the buyer's mission profile, and then you also can kind of push back a little bit for, have you considered something newer or bigger or more expensive? Have you considered something older or smaller or less expensive? and have those important conversations with buyers, because sometimes they just see, whatever they saw on YouTube. Oh, I want a Phenom 300, and I need to go from, Florida to Washington.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome. It's like,
Our goal is that if we understand our clients' needs enough and we understand them clearly enough, then when we see the right opportunity, we're going to present it to our client. Our client's going to go, that's exactly the one that we need to go at, and let's make an offer at this for it. So again, knowing our client, building that relationship with our client. I have certain clients that have 4 dogs, and that's why they have an airplane. Because there's no way that their big dogs are going to get on, on Delta, and they're not going to put them in the belly of the airplane. So, there are different drivers for everyone, and you may have a client that says, my typical trip is 300 miles, and I want a jet, and you go, well, maybe you don't want a jet. Maybe on a 300-mile trip, maybe the best airplane for you is a PC-12 or a King Air or something along those lines that operationally may still give you what you need, and the time difference is only about 3 minutes in true flight time. So, get it right now is the best opportunity to have engaging conversations with our clients, potential clients. Reach out, let us know what your missions are, what your needs are, how many people you're typically flying, and that helps us to give them better data. Listen, our clients are calling us because they've been successful and they've made the financial means to be able to own an airplane.
Right.
And so our job isn't to tell them what to do. Our job is to provide them with the relevant data so that they can come to their conclusion that says, yes, this is right. But our job is to provide them with the quality information.
Okay, I like that.
I always like to say you can't make an informed decision without having information. Right? That's exactly what we do. Those are some great final thoughts. I'm just going to wrap it up right there. That was really fantastic. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to click the subscribe button. We'll be back with more from Airplane IQ.